Welcome to the Purple Rock Survivor podcast, where we're so happy for you. You made a great decision to listen to the podcast this week. This was all you. I'm John, working my masterful social game on you. My co-host is Andy, and we're talking Kaoh episode 11, the inevitable march toward victory for a certain player. Andy, who is that player?
I don't know. Somebody will inevitably win this season, and when that somebody happens, I guarantee you, there will be people saying, see, this is what we said all along.
I just hope it gets to be us. It's more fun when it's us.
Yeah, look, it's gotten set out that somebody in the podcasting community is going to look incredibly stupid at the end of this season. And we sincerely hope it's not us. The good news is if it's us, we just go away at the summer, so it's not that big a deal.
Yeah, and, as punishment, if it is us, I'll watch Gabon this off-season.
And if it isn't, he'll watch Kaoh.
Exactly.
So, yeah, I guess we gotta talk about Michelle this episode. Clearly, if you've been listening, we've avoided talking about her. A couple weeks ago, literally made sure not to mention her name once.
Yeah, a couple of you caught on to it too, by the way.
Yeah. Last week, we just... Yeah, if there was reason to talk about her, we did, but we didn't make it a subject. And, as much as this was a bit of a reaction to the people who were like, enough on the Michelle stuff, and also because it was fun for us, it was also, I think, an accurate assessment of, the value she brought to discussing, which was 0. But she did stuff this week, and now we're going to talk about it, because, we call it like we see it. We're fair and honest.
Yeah, I mean, part of the reason for not discussing her the past couple weeks was because there was really no reason to. I mean, there was one week where it was a conscious effort, but we had said, if she actually does something, we'll obviously have to talk about her. But she didn't.
Yeah, it worked out perfectly.
Yeah.
And it was right at the peak where people were like, okay, yeah, we get your point. And I was just like, I hope she does nothing so I don't have to mention her. And she delivered.
Yep.
In one of the few ways that she has. Now, look, obviously there's other places that found plenty to talk about. And I suppose we could analyze her facial expressions. There was the blank one and the blank profile one. But this week she did things. I think actually this week was Michelle's biggest episode of the season.
That is a high bar. Yeah, she didn't need to be carried, bro, except that she absolutely did, because I don't think that this was Michelle's move to make. Although, it was funny to me that Michelle and Julia were both playing both sides, but Michelle just seamlessly shifted right back to that majority alliance like it wasn't a thing, and they just welcomed her right back. I don't think we got a lot of people saying, oh, I don't know that we trust Michelle coming back. I think she pretty much seamlessly transitioned right back in.
Yeah, no, I think, I'll give her credit. She reintegrated with the majority, and that has proven to be a good thing to do in the past. Natalie Anderson did it once Jeremy was taken out. Danny, I don't think she reintegrated with the majority, but she was able to integrate with the majority. So, yeah, it is a good play if you are an under-the-radar player. However, I'll say, I don't think she had far to go. I don't know if the other side ever really felt like she was on the outs with them so much as there was no reason to fill her in on the plan, and they didn't fear any bounce back if they didn't. Yeah, and all she had to do is say, hey, what happened, guys? And they were like, oh, sorry, Michelle. So I think, getting on the side of majority is helpful. It allowed her to work this episode, and it could keep the target off of her longer later. However, it's still not really a move. She said she never left, and look at that, she never left. Good for her for not showing hard feelings, I suppose. But they welcomed her back because they never felt threatened by her.
Right. Which can be a good thing. I mean, I don't want to discredit that she clearly has at least some sort of relationship, some working relationship with that majority side that they're willing to just keep on going with her. And Aubrey even said, she's voted the way she said she would, so that's a good thing. They feel like they have some level of trust in her.
Yeah, I think she's in. I think it was clear. They full on participated in strategy discussions, including the voting out of her supposed best friend out there, and had no problems with it. So she's in, and that's a good thing. But, I don't know if we can dump too much praise on somebody who's like, hey, congratulations, you secured 5 out of 5.
Yeah, and I wouldn't say supposed best friend. I feel like Julia is the connection that we've seen from Michelle. But that's I also feel like that's the only real connection we've seen.
Yeah, I suppose it isn't quite the word. Just, she just voted her out. So it's like, hey, how good a friend are you? But, and so let's talk about it. That's the other move she made. She voted out Julia. She, sucked it up and made her big move, which, was nothing. It was a nothing. It was a nothing move. It's not deserving of praise.
Yeah. And like I said, I was hinting at this earlier. If she wanted to flip to that other side, she needed Sydney to come with her for numbers. And I don't think she could get Sydney to come with her. So she didn't flip just because it wouldn't make sense to do that in that situation. You wouldn't have a majority. Why bother?
Yeah. So I should say, it was the right move to vote out Julia. It was the right move not to flip, meaninglessly.
Right.
So I'm not taking any credit for her. I'm not judging what she did, but she deserves no credit for being like, oh, okay, 4 people are going to do this and I'm powerless to stop it, so I will as well. It's not something that she can really build a case for herself. And we'll get into this pretty quickly. I think the episode really made this about her. But here's the thing. The people on the season, the people that were voting with her, they're not watching the episode in the edit. They're the ones that stood there and just told her what to do. They know how much work Michelle put into this big move of getting rid of Julia, and the answer is almost none.
Right. So if they end up in a jury at the end and Michelle tries to say, well, I did vote out my closest ally, Julia, they'd say, yeah, because we told you to do that, though. That was your assignment.
And they don't all need to be on the jury either. Just enough of them to tell everybody, right?
Right.
Cause I don't think she can use that as credit. Because it's just be like, you shouldn't have even done that. Honestly, it could just be a sign of how weak-willed and meaningless she is. It's like, you were powerless to do anything to stop your friend. You were so powerless we just said it in front of you and didn't even ask you if you were okay with it.
Yeah, and she's not getting the thing that Ty got last time where it's, I'm getting plans told to me and I feel like I'm not a big part of this alliance. Michelle's totally fine with that. She's like, I'm just getting plans told to me, but I'm cool. I'm going to roll with that.
I mean, I don't even think she was completely cool with it. I mean, obviously she, cried the tears of victory and all that, but, I think she was choked up about it from what we saw. It's like, I was fine and happy when the plan was Jason. Now it's Julia, but, the difference is that she was like, but what are you going to do? And she just voted out Julia. And I did think it was pretty telling how they were just discussing, and it was Sydney was like, oh, it should be Jason. And then I believe it was Aubrey's like, no, it should be Julia. And they're just like, oh yeah, Julia. Without a care in the world of what this would mean to Michelle.
Yep.
They didn't even try to broach it in a sensitive way. And yeah, to your point, if you want comparison, compare the way Aubrey talked to Ty last week.
Yep.
About flipping. Now, obviously, the power is very different in this scenario. Ty had some, but that's kind of our point. She did nothing. She had no power. She continued to do nothing. Good for her for not hurting herself, but I don't think she impressed a single person out there.
Right. And like I said, the same conversation last week with, Scott and Ty and Jason sitting there, and Scott and Jason decide, oh yeah, we're going to turn on Aubrey right after, Ty has this big discussion with them. Aubrey and Sydney did the exact same thing to Michelle here, and Michelle just rolled with the punches because that's what Michelle can do.
That's her, one defined skill. Actually, 2 defined skills, because the other thing that led to her big, episode was she won immunity, so hey, congratulations.
Yes.
If she could continue to do those, then maybe that's the case. It worked for Fabio.
Yeah, if it's just a, constant mnemonic device streak that she has to go on, every one of these challenges is going to have a memory aspect, she should be great.
Yeah, she came close in the stacking, so I suppose she could win other challenges. But yeah, getting back to the voting out, when we've been talking about potential jury votes for Michelle, and, not against somebody who could not get any, but against, real players, I think Julia's always been the lead pipe block, right? Didn't she just, completely blindside and betray Julia, a week and a half before Final Tribal Council?
Yeah, she did, but I feel like she can make the argument, and again, this probably doesn't help her with the other jurors, but they're going to know it anyway. She can just say, look, I would have loved to save you, but I was powerless to stop it.
Yeah, I think she could say that, but, so this is what was a little bit interesting to me. And I'm not writing off Julia's vote, but I'm saying that maybe if Michelle finds herself against somebody really impressive, it could be a sweep. Julia said she was kind of hurt by it, and that Michelle completely blindsided her. Not just didn't tell her that she wasn't going to vote for Ty, she told Julia that they were voting for Jason. Like, she didn't even tell, like, Julia had no idea that her name was on the block. Now, she says she had a feeling that it could have been, but, like, Michelle did not, like, send her good buddy out there in a nice way. Like, she really completely cut the throat. And often what happens in Survivor is you're most hurt by the person who you were most close to.
Oh, it's going to be a sad Lil situation on the jury where Julia's going to be like, you never told me, Savage.
Exactly. I'm saying Julia the sad Lil. I mean, it could be like, Dawn or something. Like, just like, those are the portrayals that hurt more. I mean, they're, great friends now, through social media, but it's been like a freaking year. That's one thing I want people to remember, that people are like trying to judge what jury reactions are based on how people get along now. No cast has ever had as much time to get over this stuff as they have.
And also, they didn't get to see how it was portrayed on TV. They didn't get to see any, like, side conversations that they weren't involved in, blah, blah, blah.
But yeah, I'll just say, like, I still think Julie would vote for Michelle, but, I mean, the way that this went down, especially if she tries to present it, my big move was getting rid of you. Yeah, I could see that not being a lock against all players. But I think what most people are, that are, on the Michelle bandwagon are probably screaming at us right now is that we're talking about the move. Because that's what we do here, A. But B, their point is never that she's been doing good things. Actually, I should correct that. A lot of their points aren't that they're doing some good things. I've seen plenty of you Michelle truthers out there talking about her strategy and what a great player she is. But the edit, I think, is what's more interesting. Because, yeah, I'm right there with you. None of this was her decision. I think Sydney was not flipping at all. And thus, there was no move for Michelle to make. And I will say, as a piece of evidence for that, is Sydney saying right in front of everybody, oh, just tell them we're doing the Thai thing. Like, it was such a non-consideration that she didn't even think that was probably not a smart thing to say in front of Thai.
Right.
So, like, I think that's why she had, she had no consideration of doing the Thai vote, and that's my evidence anyway. About, the episode made this about Michelle and her decision. So, does that feed into the fact that we are watching her inevitable path to victory?
All right. I'm going to throw out some hope for the people that are dreading a potential Michelle win.
Me.
Yes.
Me.
Yes, exactly. You and basically everybody in the Purple Rock staff chats, and very many of our listeners root for Jason to get voted out. I think Michelle can also beat Joe, but I just don't think Joe's making it to the final three.
And I don't see him making it with Michelle.
Right.
Is a big thing.
Exactly. If he was making it to final tribal council, I feel like we're going to get at least a little bit of Joe as something about him. We've gotten nothing. So as long as Jason gets voted out, you can probably rest easily that Michelle's not winning.
Problem is, he isn't getting voted out. Or at least he hasn't. And if this was her best episode, if she was the star of this episode, I kind of feel like Jason was the second star. So that has me a little bit nervous.
I'd call him the star of this episode. I think she was actually the number 2 spot.
Yeah, I mean, either way though, that's not good, for me and my stress levels. Because, yeah, Jason, their fate is tied together, and we're going to talk about that in more detail later. Because, yeah, I mean, if it was presented as Michelle's big decision, I think it was presented as Jason's big win. Like, he was the one talking a lot about, I'm not going to give up, and I got to keep trying these things, and as long as I'm here, I'm going to do stuff. And lo and behold, he survives. Not through really anything that he did.
Right.
But he's there. And if we're talking about edit and a story, that's a story. The other story is all the moves that, the counter moves to try and get rid of Ty were his moves, according to the episode. So if they were going to build to a Jason Michelle Final 2, you might see episodes like the one we just saw.
But if you're the type of person that reads this show's edit for like narrative arcs, Jason just had one in this episode. He's now the underdog, fighting, doing whatever he can to stay alive. He's going to do this. He's going to take it to the end. Tell me Michelle's narrative arc. Before this week, we knew nothing about her as a person. We actually finally got her mentioning that she's a bartender this week and that she has a great social game because of that. But almost every other player left, you could say we've gotten a real personal story from.
And not just the players left. Some of the players who have left.
Yes. Sydney's the secret Ivy Leaguer. Jason's got this autistic daughter. Ty was a refugee. There's developed stories for these other people. Michelle was a blank slate, and I think she still mostly is.
One thing she did get this week was the vaunted, second person acknowledgement or whatever they call it. Now, interestingly, this is the very first time it feels like anybody's ever talked about Michelle in a positive light. And now, again, nobody's talked about her in a negative light either.
Nobody's talked about her.
They've talked about her as a number once or twice, but yeah, not as a her, as a, this is something I know about Michelle and like to share. And Aubrey, spoke highly of her. I hated that. And look, I do agree with the case that, the episode seemed to make the vote for Julia about her. And the case for Michelle that I will not argue that much, the one that I understand people are making, is she gets attention that is completely undeserved given her station ability and, charisma, all of which are nothing. So it's like, hey, why would they keep doing this for her? Why isn't she Joe? I think there's answers for that don't necessarily equal Victor, but this episode is a little telling that it was her instead of Sydney. However, it could just be that hers was the more dramatic decision in the episode. That Sydney decided not to do it. For one, it could have been as instantly like, I ain't never doing Jason's plan, so forget about it.
Right.
Which I didn't plan on that being an impression, but that's probably the best Sydney impression I could do.
Nailed it.
So they're like, oh, that's a dead end. Like, they wanted to build suspense, because I don't know if you've ever watched Survivor, it's what they do.
Also, they like emotional stories, and, we got tears. Probst feeds on tears.
Yes, I think they're literally what keeps him looking young.
Yep.
Ish. I think the fact that Probe looks super young might be getting overplayed at this point. He looks younger than he is, but I don't know if he looks as young. Watch an early season. The differences are there. But, yeah, no, I think we could write it off as that. I'm not completely writing it off. I have never, and I will not until she is vanquished, say that Michelle can't win this game.
Oh, you don't agree with me that once Jason's gone?
Actually, I was just about to say, maybe if once Jason's gone,
okay,
I'll finally breathe easy. But, I won't send out the super obnoxious tweets that I have planned to tell her torture stuff.
Oh, you do definitely have some good ones planned.
I have some you don't even know about. This brain just keeps whirling. Oh God, I need this to happen. But I think that it could be just as simple as, for this episode, the story of this episode to work, you need Michelle. Because otherwise, it's just, hey, why don't we vote out Julia? Alright. And yeah, there's no emotion, there's no drama, there's no will they, won't they, can she? Like, I think the reason why they probably didn't make it about Sydney's decision is that there wasn't really much drama there. I legitimately think Sydney was just like, nah.
Yeah, I don't think she was willing to work with Jason again. And that'll come up later in the show when we talk about various people's chances.
And I agree, that's 100% it. Even if it would have made sense to vote out Ty, I think she just didn't want to do that. And let's talk about that right now. Should she have flipped to get rid of Ty?
I would say probably no, because I don't think you want the numbers to get too close like that. Mm-hmm. It's a little too risky. What is interesting, what if she would have flipped on Aubrey right here?
Gotten them all to vote Aubrey?
Yeah, I think if you're going to flip, I don't know that it's Ty that's your target. I mean, I get it because he has the idol and the advantage, but, if you're going to flip and you're going to play it really risky by letting the numbers get close, take the big shot and take out Aubrey, not Ty.
I had not thought of that, and I think there's might be something to that. It's kind of part and parcel with something I was saying earlier when Aubrey took out Debbie instead. It's like, if you're going to risk it all. I think Aubrey would be the more valuable target. You decouple her with Joe.
Yep.
You don't have to worry about the blowback. I do think that the nice little part of the puzzle for Sydney is that if there was any blowback, it didn't matter. But, yeah, Ty's not giving his idol to Aubrey, so you don't have to worry about it. You can flush the idol anyway. And, that's something. But to the earlier point, I also don't think she should have flipped on Ty. For the same reason I said last week that they shouldn't vote out Ty. This would have surrendered a lot of power to Julia.
Yeah, exactly. Julia and Jason, you don't want to get them that close because Michelle is a tentative on your side. She's there because that's where the numbers are. She could just as easily flip over to Julia's side, and then it's just too close. You don't want to risk
and
that.
then something like a random medevac happens, and suddenly
Right.
you're on the bottom. And then also, it's like, I don't even know if she would get credit for it. Like, when Probst was pushing everybody and basically laying out arguments for them at Tribal Council, to the point where Jason didn't be like, yeah, say that one again. I think the argument should be like, well, if we made a big move right now to help Jason, how is that not Jason's move?
Right. Yeah, exactly. You don't want to be Jason's proxy. I mean, I think you keep the numbers here. Like I said, if you're going to take the risk of letting the numbers get a little too close for comfort, you got to take out Aubrey. And I don't think that Sydney was willing to do that. I think she likes having Aubrey as a rational ally. And I also think she probably assumes she can beat Aubrey. And I don't even think that that's totally crazy from her perspective. I don't think she will beat Aubrey.
Right.
But I think from her perspective, I can see why she thinks she would.
Agreed. I think if you're out there, you feel like equals. And then, if we step back, for one, edit-wise, nowhere near equals. But even just, jury makeup and stuff, it's hard to find Sydney's allies anywhere in the game. Besides, Aubrey, which might be another reason why you just don't flip on her.
Right. Well, and then, you know what? It is a little difficult to find Sydney's allies, but I think that's because she's not anybody's number one.
Yeah.
She works with everyone, though. Like, we even saw it in this episode. Like, who's Jason coming to? Julia wants to talk to her. Everyone wants to work with Sydney. And I think not being anybody's number one might actually be a good thing, because people who like her won't feel super betrayed when she takes them out, because it's not that, like, Dawn level of connection where people feel betrayed. People are going to be like, oh, Michelle.
Well, and she might have already betrayed the people that she had the Dawn-like connection.
Exactly. And Scott's the one that's crying about it now. But I mean, I think if she made it to the end, is he still going to be bitter about that? Well, maybe. Who knows?
But would he be bitter enough that he wouldn't vote for her against, lesser competition? I think the answer is no.
Right.
For whatever else you think of him, he has, had most of his life playing in high-level competition, and I think he probably, I'm not saying he'll be immune to just voting the way for people he likes or voting against people he doesn't like, but I do think he might be a little more aligned to voting for somebody who beat him. And we saw that in the season. When he got beat in challenges, he tended to congratulate the person.
Yep.
Anyway, I agree. I don't think she should have flipped, and that's why, again, I don't know how the episode necessarily could have built this around will Sydney flip or will she not? Because I don't know if she entertained it enough. I'm sure she gave, we saw, her weighing her options in the confessional. You can always get that confessional out of anybody.
Exactly.
But, would we have felt it? Would we really be like, oh, is she going to do this? I will say the one thing that made me think that it could happen was Jason's confessional, where he's like, we should approach Sydney because Sydney is motivated by making big moves.
Yeah. I mean, should we just jump into discussing Jason here? Because I think, like I said, I think he was actually the star of the episode. He made what I thought was a great pitch to Sydney, basically saying, hey, this is it. This is your free shot at tie. Because, I mean, really there's no risk to him. Either way, he and Julia are at risk. So you at least make the, gamble that, hey, we're willing to sit here and be the potential target if this backfires. There's no potential blowback where you're getting voted out in this scenario. So good pitch. The problem really is that he screwed himself a long time ago by not having enough working relationships.
Yep.
Once his alliance split, he just didn't have the connections to go and grab new people to bring to his side. Sydney was really his only hope, and he explicitly said that in this episode.
Yeah, no, I mean, when they embarked on Plan Sabotage, everybody's reaction was, congratulations, morons, you just lost the jury. My reaction a bit to that was, I'm not sure he had a jury, so wasn't anything to lose, but I think this is what he lost. He lost the ability to get people to work with him down the road. Besides, Ty, who was kind of trapped into it, and that didn't really work that well. If he would have instead reacted a little bit more like he did today, in last night's episode, where he calmly took the betrayal. He was finally humbled a bit and, gritted his teeth and got through that without making any big demonstrable situations. Maybe he would have had Sydney. Maybe the next time she got angry at somebody, she'd flip back. But now, no, screw that guy. He hit her machete.
I think he did a great job, just taking it from Ty. He basically did the Natalie Anderson thing. No, I understand. It's a game. You had to do what you had to do. I get it.
I'm not going to kill Mark.
And then he went to the confessional. He's like, F this guy. And, but that's what you need to do. Just sit there and take it when in the actual conversation. Producers pull you aside. Tell us how you really feel now, Jason. And he did. That's exactly what he should have done. And I think a lot of people watching are forgetting that in game time, it was only less than a week ago that he and Scott were ruining the camp and, dumping out the fire or pouring the water on the fire and all those things. It's, it's not like that's some far off memory for them. That's very recent.
Yeah. And it's still raw, I think, especially for somebody like Sydney. Who, I think, one of the reasons why she was motivated to flip in the first time was she had her fill with those guys, and then they did that, and I think she's written them off, and I don't blame her.
Right.
Even if maybe she shouldn't. To the point, I don't think she should have gone to their side this week, but there could come a time. And I suppose if it's completely within, her favor, she might. But yeah, to your point about Jason, I think he played everything as well as he could. It didn't work, but that's about as good as he could do. And particularly what impressed me is when he was having that little strategy session with Julia. I think his read on everybody was really good. I think he nailed them.
Yeah, it is funny because they had the proper perspective to show Joe being an absolute puppet
that
for
was
Aubrey.
So great.
Oh, the confessional, or not even confessional. I think he was just openly saying it. Aubrey told Joe to just sit there and not do anything until she got back, and then you pan back out and you see Joe just sitting there not doing anything.
Doing that. Oh my God, I love it. Look, I'm not going to try to change the mind of any of our audience about Jason. If you don't like him, he's given you plenty of reasons not to. I don't even like him. However, that guy has abused me not infrequently this season. Yeah. It has happened a few times, and that moment was fantastic.
He's been at least entertaining. You can say what you want. I've been entertained.
Yeah, I think he's added a lot to this season. Because I think, one of the things that makes seasons good is having an antagonist that you root against passionately. If they had another fan vote, I can't see me ever voting for him unless they box villains into a group. You have to vote for someone. But I do think he has made this season better through his presence. I think he was a great casting find by this. I think he's delivered exactly what they wanted him to deliver.
Right. I think he gave them what they wanted. One of the things that I really liked about this particular scenario, though, is it shows something that I think we've discussed many times on this podcast. It doesn't matter how great your plan is. People have to be willing to flip to your side. It's the reason why, Troy from One World was a terrible player, and I love talking about this. He had the right plan to flip on Kim. It was the absolute right thing to do, but nobody wanted to work with him because they didn't like him, and they couldn't trust him. He just didn't have any sort of foundation in place, and the same thing bit Jason in the butt right here. He didn't have any sort of relationships he could trade on.
I'll actually go one step further. I think he actually has a really good handle on how to play Survivor. What he doesn't have a good handle on is himself. He is the problem. It's not his ideas, it's not his strategy, it's not his moves, other than, the strategy of, sabotaging, which is just an extension of him and his own ego. And, his need to assert himself as, the dominant person in probably most scenarios in his life. That's a bad impulse. And I think that's the problem. I think, even if you go right back to Braun, other than just not getting rid of Alicia right away, I think his reads were pretty good. When he got rid of Jenny, and he made fun of her tribal counselor, oh yeah, tell us how you're going to vote us out, and then we'll say, okay. He was right. His strategy's fine. It just doesn't matter because he just naturally puts people off by the way he is. And we've seen that in Confessional. We've seen people just look at that guy lying around and he thinks he's everything and cutting toenails into pots and stuff. I think his moves last night were good. I think the episode was interested in making him look good. I believe there was like 2 confessionals where he talked about, I'm the big underdog and I'm not going to give up. I don't know if he's going anywhere, and that worries me. Not because I need to get rid of him, because as we've said, he's entertaining. It's the other.
Yeah. And like I said, they definitely developed a narrative for him of being the underdog. And through his own words, he almost explicitly said, I'm the underdog here. So at least he has a story going forward. I imagine though he's going to stay the underdog, because I don't think in other people's minds that he's the lovable underdog.
Yeah, no, I think he was definitely the underdog, and he'll even be viewed as the underdog, but I don't know if he'll get any of that, underdog cred. Because like almost any jury will eventually start cheering for the underdog, even if it wasn't something they were lying to or anything, because, it's just more interesting for them. It's like, they stayed alive. Ooh, that was exciting. It wasn't the person.
Yeah, think of Spencer and Cagayan. I mean,
think of Kelly Wentworth last season. Apparently Keith and Kimmy were, real contenders to get the jury votes. It's just, I think, a natural inclination to, want to see the unexpected happen while you're there. Because in some ways, like, that underdog just becomes, like, your talisman when you're watching. Because obviously you were an underdog, you lost.
Right.
It's like, if I'd only hung around a little longer, I could have done what Jason's doing. Right. Problem is, I don't know if they'll be rooting for Jason because they're also invested in seeing him fail.
Yep.
Not all of them, though. And that's something worth noting.
That's true. Although, we'll get to it later, but yeah, there's going to be issues with the vote count at the end for him.
Mm-hmm. All right. So, Jason's big ploy was to, convince them to flip on Ty because he's a jury threat. And, and also because of his, idol and that sort of thing. Is Ty actually a jury threat? Or is that just something we were all assuming because he seems so nice? But, it kind of feels like there's been more than once people kind of talking about him, as a flipper.
At the very least, he's less of a jury threat than we thought he would be. Mm-hmm. I think we assumed and have said probably several times this season, if you take Ty to the end, you're an idiot. We actually got Sydney saying in the episode, we ain't going to take no damn Ty to no damn final tribal because Sydney is freaking television gold. So someone's actually saying the words on the show that she doesn't want to take Ty to the end.
Yeah, I think he probably still is some. And, if people didn't think that, they wouldn't have been receptive to the argument. I think to somebody like Sydney, he is. Certainly to, Michelle, Julia. I'm not sure he's a threat at all to Aubrey. And I do actually, you know what? Not at all is an exaggeration.
Right.
I don't think she should necessarily be afraid of him. And I think what it depends on is his performance at the final jury. If he's, a stammering apologist, then he could actually probably easily be beat. And people will resent him for betraying them when they thought he was this trustworthy, cuddly old guy.
Yeah.
But, if he starts turning on a story that he's a refugee who got from, camp to here, I think that actually might move people, especially if they're not thrilled with all their choices.
Yeah, and that's a great moving story. I think the problem is, and you kind of hit on it, Aubrey should not be remotely afraid to take him to the end because she can always argue to a jury, look, Ty's moves weren't even Ty's moves. They were my moves.
They were my moves, and before they were my moves, they were Scott and Jason's moves. Yes,
right,
absolutely.
Exactly. So, if she can brand it that way as something she did and that she made Ty do, which isn't even that big of a stretch, I don't think she has much to worry about in front of a jury.
Yeah, and, we've also seen that he isn't necessarily the best at arguing his case. I mean, even when he was talking to Jason, I totally get it, but, he let out a bit of a laugh. Not smooth. I think it was a nervous laugh, right? But, that's the sort of thing that would hurt you in front of a jury if they are indeed making up their mind in the final tribal council, which, is often a rare thing to do. I do think that it's a little overblown, but if people are perceiving him as a jury threat, then that's just as dangerous to him as anything else.
Yeah. I do like the perception that's come up in our comments section on our site once or twice. He seems the most likely candidate to be the next Amanda Kimmel, though.
Yeah, no, that's kind of what he's getting at. He's just apologizing for everything and all that. That does not play off well unless it's a confident apology. Every once in a while somebody does want to hear that, voting them off was the biggest mistake ever. But you have to do it in a way. It can't look pathetic, basically. It has to be almost like, I really, truly regret that, and I hope we can work on it.
I'm very sorry for ruining your $1 million march to victory, Andrew Savage.
Yeah, but it can't be, I'm so sorry. And, that's not just, Dawn. That's like Boston Rob and All-Stars crying. It's affected a few people over the years. Or as you say, Amanda. Staying with Ty, he still has that idol and that advantage. And he's got 2 tribal councils, possibly, to play them. What should he do with them?
I'm actually kind of surprised he didn't play the idol there.
I was surprised, too. That was pretty ballsy, and I wasn't 100% convinced that it wouldn't have backfired. I was pretty confident that it wasn't him, because I didn't think that Sydney was actually flipping.
Right.
But it was in play.
Yeah, again, I mean, I was confident as a TV viewer. I don't know that if I were actually out playing Survivor and I were Ty that I would be that confident. It really...
He wasn't confident, too.
Right. And, at 7 left and 5 left, those are really the times to play it because blindsides at 6 are a lot harder to pull off. They're pretty uncommon. So really, if you're not playing it then, you're probably going to try to hold it to 5. And I'm kind of amazed that he held it, and more amazed that he actually asked Aubrey if he should play the idol, which again, if you make it to final tribal council against Ty, there's your argument. He couldn't even decide for himself. He asked Aubrey for a potential huge move.
And you all saw it.
Yes.
This is even up for interpretation. You were sitting there when it happened.
I told you though, and remember like a week or 2 ago in that secret scene, suddenly Aubrey is like far and away his number 1 and he's all about her.
And I think that's 100% true.
Yeah.
She is without a doubt his number 1. I don't know if he has a number 2.
Phrasing. He's Bruce kind of guy.
Oh no, medevac scenario. But I don't know if he can wait till 5, but it worries me that because I do think if he's not playing it now, and Aubrey just saved him, and there's no reason not to trust her, he could get blindsided next week. Sometimes it's harder to do at 6 because of numbers, but I think the numbers could be 5-1.
Yeah, but the reason I can understand her not too assertively pushing that is she can probably beat him at the end, and if he's that in her pocket, it's kind of useful to have him having an idol.
Yeah, no, that's the question that people have thought. Now, I think first off, there's the question, should she have done it? I see the arguments. I would say no, because I think for her, Ty is an asset. He's not a threat. So him, as you say, him having an idol doesn't hurt her and could potentially help her. Maybe if they get to Final 5 and he wins immunity, then she gets an idol,
Yep.
I don't think the idol will ever burn her in the next 2 weeks.
Yeah.
All it could do is prevent her from voting out Ty in those next 2 weeks. I don't think she should vote out Ty in the next 2 weeks. So just from that perspective, no, I don't think she should have gotten to flush it, because the other thing is maybe it goes back in the game and somebody she is trying to get rid of gets it.
Exactly.
Maybe Jason finds it.
Right.
So no, I don't think they should have flushed the idol, but also literally, it's not like she had a plan. It was right before Jeff says, all right, that's it. She had to come up with an answer right then to a question she never once expected to get. I think in that scenario, a good default way to do is just be honest. But she was.
Yeah.
So, don't criticize her for that. Why didn't she think of that in a split second? A, because she shouldn't have, and B, because you couldn't have. But did you get the impression that Sydney and Michelle were trying to get him to play it?
Not really.
Is that because you're not prone to give them credit?
Well, no, I would gladly give Sydney credit.
Half of them credit?
Yeah. No, I just got the impression that, if Sydney was so open to discuss, we'll just go with the Ty plan right in front of him. I have a feeling that there were enough assurances there that, she never really intended to.
But not so much that Ty didn't, get pretty spooked by it.
And again, I get it, because anytime your name gets brought up, I'm sure, even if it's just in a oh, no, this isn't the real plan, there's still that voice in the back of your head.
Yeah. I'll say, while it was happening, I'm like, are they trying to get him to flush the idol? So it did enter my mind. I would, if that was the case, I need to see a confessional. I'm not going to come out and say that that's what it was. And frankly, it'd be tough to get that confessional. They don't typically start the episode with, this is what I was trying to do at Tribal Council, unless it's, this is what I did at Tribal Council.
Right. Yeah, it'd have to be a secret scene.
Yeah, and they didn't have it for this week because they don't typically do a lot of bonus scenes of, this is what I'm going to do at Tribal Council, unless it's the person going home.
Right.
But I did watch for them. I watched Michelle and Sydney's, and half of them were interesting. But yeah, it's possible.
So we were talking, though, about what he should do with the idol. You already mentioned he's basically got 2 spots left that he can play those things now. Again, the advantage, the double vote thing, it makes most sense to play that in an even-numbered Tribal Council. But they don't necessarily know what the advantage is. So I would err on the side of playing the idol this coming Tribal Council because that is a known quantity. And then, you've got that advantage. You can lie about it. You can do whatever you want with it. Just save it for Final 5 because you're going to be able to use it then.
Yeah, like as we said last week, and I think this week bared it out and made it even more true. The actual double vote is worthless. Like that, I don't think it will have any value to him. Like you can see if Sydney gets pissed at him, as the preview seems to suggest, and flips, then playing that advantage would be great. Then his vote, his 2 votes, Aubrey and Joe's, would be enough to beat Sydney, Jason, and Michelle. However, I don't see Sydney flipping to force a 3-3 tie, so I don't really think it would come into play. So, as you're suggesting, the only advantage of the advantage at this point is the mystery. So, keep it a mystery. Like, playing it won't help him. I don't think that 2 votes, an extra vote would save him if he was in trouble next week. If he's in trouble next week, it's because everybody's voting for him, not because 3 people are voting for him.
Right.
So, I think he should play the idol. Because I think he's going to need to play the idol is my worrisome prediction.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, play it. And my worry is that he won't. I think he wants to wait till 5. I think that's some of what was driving the Scott decision. I think that's what we saw last night. The fact that he amazingly didn't play it. I think he just wants to hold on to it to get as far as possible. And I'm so scared. I'm so scared for it.
Well, and, we shouldn't rule out the possibility that he wins an immunity this coming week and doesn't have to play it anyway.
Well, that's the thing. If he doesn't have to play it, then you do nothing with either. But that's the other reason why, if he doesn't win immunity, play it. Because, bet on yourself. Maybe you'll win immunity next week.
Exactly. That's the thing is you'll know you'll be safe for 3 more days, and you've got another shot at immunity, and you've got an advantage.
Yeah, and, that's kind of the reason why, James's non-idol play was so dumb. You had 2 idols and 3 Tribal Councils to do it. Bet on yourself in one of those. Obviously, even though James had never won an immunity, but at that point he didn't know he was no good at it. I was like, yeah. Yeah, so anyway, that's a long ago argument. But it's kind of this point. If you don't have immunity now, you have immunity. Use it. Use this immunity now. Immunity now is far more important than the potential of immunity next week. Unless you're just so sure. And I don't know how he could be so sure, especially coming off of this Tribal Council.
Yeah, if he is so sure, he's insane.
Yeah, except that he didn't need it. He was right. And Aubrey saved it. It's kind of like what I was saying last week about why I'm not judging the fact that Scott didn't just play his idol beforehand. Because the week before, he didn't need to. And there was no, if he was history suggests that waiting is fine. And that could be what burns tie next week.
Yep.
All right, so somebody actually went home, and we haven't really talked about her at all.
We should, though. I think she had a great season. And I'm going to say, great for a teenager. That's right. I'm leaving the qualifier in there.
I literally have written in my notes, the qualifier for a teenager is still necessary.
Yep. And you know why? Because we do that with athletes who are great as teenagers all the time. When, Carmelo Anthony is coming into the draft, he's great for a teenager. Yeah, he's 19 and he's awesome at basketball. He's gonna get better once he matures. Same with Julia. She'll be better once she matures. It's not that she's not good now. It's just that she's got potential still. She's going to get better.
Yeah, it would be sad if you peaked at 18.
Right.
And true, I'm sure it's true for some people. I think better for her. I will say, I think she was good. I think she was alright. But I think she's already starting to get a little overrated. I think part of it is, that's why the qualifier for a teenager is necessary. Because people's expectations were so low. And then she came out and she did things. She tried to do things. She was making moves, moves that made sense for her in some ways. The problem, and why, I think we need to maybe calm down a bit, is she failed in all those moves. She had some good ideas. She did not have the skill to pull them off, which is why maybe, 5 years from now, maybe 2 years from now, she will. But for all her vaunted ideas of playing the middle, everybody knew that's what she was doing. Everybody, but Debbie, I suppose, knew that's what she was doing. So, that counts. Execution matters.
Yeah, and to be fair to her, I think she actually already is better than a lot of other adults that have played.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. She might be better than some adults that might be winning this season, so.
Yeah, and absolutely no shame in her game. She did a great job. And she made it as far as she can with that playing the middle strategy. It's not going to last forever. I mean, it was worthy gamble for her. Good job.
Mm-hmm. No, I think, I give her credit for the idea, but, not so much for their execution.
Right.
Which is kind of similar to a point we made about Jason.
Yeah, and that's the thing we were trying to say is I think, with a little more life experience under her belt and navigating these sorts of situations in real life, I think she'll be fine. I think if she comes back, she'll have a little more experience. I think we even saw that with Sierra going from Blood versus Water to her second season. She learned things and put those things into practice in her second chance. Absolutely. I think Julia will do the exact same thing.
No, I'd co-sign for... I mean, at the beginning of the season when we were like, yeah, she's a teenager, don't worry about it.
Right.
Oh, I was like, yeah, I'd be interested maybe in a few years. If she's good, yeah. Good for her, great for her. 18, I'm pretty confident she is the youngest person to ever play Survivor.
I believe that is correct, yes.
So, bravo.
Yeah.
But yeah, maybe she wasn't a robbed goddess. So she did well for where she was, and she went about as far as she was going to go. And honestly, I respect more that she went out now as a result of trying and failing than just hanging around. Natalie Tenorelli made it to the final two, and I don't imagine many people would say she was better. I was going to say any, but every single person on Survivor who's ever played on Survivor will have somebody saying that they were amazing.
It is amazing the corners of fandom within the Survivor universe.
Yeah, hey, that's maybe one of the strengths and why this show that we talk about so much is so enduring. All right, so I think that's it on this episode. Let's look ahead.
To the future we go. Let's figure out the path to victory for the people that are left.
Yeah, so we'll talk about all 6 remaining players, what they would need to do to win. Now, we're not judging whether they can win based on edit or anything, and that's not because we suddenly become anti-edit. I think there's a little bit of confusion there. We can take edit into consideration. It's just, there's a way of maybe over-analyzing the edit that we've been cautioning against. But this isn't about that. This is, what they should be doing to win, a year ago. And... Some of them might be kind of impossible, but I don't know how many people I would actually have in a 0% club if we were to start one right now.
Well, let's start with the obvious winner of the season.
Yeah, so Michelle. Honestly, so on Know-It-Alls this week, Fishbach was back on the, she's going to win. And some people were like, oh, God, he's guaranteeing it. I can't wait to hear what Andy says. I heard the resignation in Stephen's voice, and I sympathized. He did not upset me with that talk at all, because I think there's a path, and I don't even think it's incredibly unlikely, even though it is incredibly specific and difficult. Obviously, the next thing she needs to do is get to the final 2 with Jason.
Yeah, and to be clear, there have been situations in the past, in very recent seasons in the past, where there was a very difficult path to the end, but the edit made it seem pretty likely that difficult path would be blazed by this person.
Yeah, Mike needed to win every immunity but one, where his idol would take care of. And we were all like, yeah, I don't care, he's doing it. Obviously he's doing it.
The edit has shown us Mike is going to do this, and he did. And it was very improbable, but it wasn't if you'd been watching the show.
Yeah, and I do think Michelle has almost one path, and I don't just mean get to the final 2 to Jason. I think there's a specific order that needs to happen for that to happen. But it could happen is my problem. So to get there, I think she needs to, or I'm not going to say she. They need to blindside Ty next week.
Mm-hmm.
That needs to happen. He needs to go taking his idol out. Because if he doesn't go this week, he can't go next week, and then that throws a lot of things out.
Mm-hmm.
So Ty needs to go now, or I think she's done. Because if Ty doesn't go this week, then it'll be at the expense of either Jason or Michelle. In which case, game over. So next week's a really important week. I think Joe needs to be evacuated. And that is not because Joe is a threat to her. It's because removing Joe removes a lot of, especially if it's Joe and Ty, removes a lot of Aubrey's power in the game. And if Joe is no longer around to be a goat, hey, look who's still there as a goat. Michelle. Aubrey and Sydney go in whichever order in the next two. Whoever makes the move on the other one, and then the final three try immunity, they don't win, and they get eliminated. What's interesting about all of this is Michelle doesn't need to do anything for this thing to happen.
Right.
Which is good, because she's demonstrated so far not a great ability to make anything happen. Like, none of these things need to be her move. Blindsiding Ty could be Sydney's move that forces Aubrey's hand, and Michelle's just like, yeah, sure, I'll do that, cool. Joe, obviously, getting evac, obviously has nothing to do with it. And why I have Joe as an evac instead of getting voted out is I don't know why anybody would vote Joe out unless you had
right.
to.
Yeah, there's really no reason to do so.
Yeah, other than to get rid of Aubrey, like if she's immune or something. But even then, you take out, frankly, Michelle if you have to. There's no reason to ever vote out Joe, so she needs Joe to be evacuated. And then, Aubrey and Sydney would crush her in a trial council. So that's exactly what needs to happen in my mind.
Yeah, and to be clear, you're saying there has to be a final two in this scenario, which is not out of the realm of possibility, but if it's a final three, she just cannot win.
I mean, again, unless it's Joe and Jason and her. But that's not even worth really entertaining. And again, I don't know how they get rid of Aubrey if Joe's around.
Yeah, it's just too absurd of a scenario. So I get it. It's final two against Jason is basically Michelle's path to victory.
Yeah, and I really think that Ty needs to go next week. If Ty survives next week, I think Michelle's done.
All right. So let's talk about Ty then. How's Ty getting to the end and winning?
All right. So, do you agree with all of that, or do you have
I
different take?
Certainly seconded all that. So that's why we're moving on to Ty.
Yeah. I was actually giving you a chance to talk. I know you don't know what that feels like.
Well, how about let me give you my Ty scenario.
Yes, exactly. There's a fair.
All right. So really, all Ty needs to do is flip on Aubrey. Probably needs to get rid of Sydney, but I don't even know necessarily that he does. And then once he gets to a final tribal council, just make Jason's anti-Ty argument that he made in this week's tribal council. And like you said, make his refugee story nice and public again. There you go. That's probably all it takes.
Yeah, I think more specifically, he needs to survive the next two.
Yes.
Via the combination of using an idol and maybe an evac or an immunity. But evac would be better because that adds the immunities he needs to win down the road. I don't think he should be flipping on Aubrey soon because I think Aubrey is somebody who will protect him. But he does need to take her out.
Yes, because he can't beat her. That's if he's going to win, she's got to be gone before he gets the final tribal council.
Yeah, but I think winning the immunity and then her being voted out, or somebody deciding now that his idol and advantage don't make him a threat, Aubrey is the big threat, and they would work with him, or at the very least not target him.
Right.
But I think the big danger to Ty is these next two votes. And the bigger danger is next week. If he can get by next week, I feel good about his chances of getting through the next week.
All right. How about Aubrey then?
So I think we both already said she can beat anybody in the finals.
So the path to victory
is... the challenge is getting there.
Get to the finals, yeah. And really, I mean, if she has a closest competitor, I'd say it's probably Sydney.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't really worry about her at a final tribal council. I mean, if it's Sydney and Ty together, maybe then you worry about pluralities or something like that. But that's such a stretch. I think no matter what, her path is really just survive until final tribal council.
Yeah. I think the biggest threat to Aubrey's continuance in the game is Jason. I think she needs to remove Jason as early as possible. And that's not just because I want Jason gone so that the doomsday scenario is taken off the table. He's the only person that's not working with her right now.
You want her to go full Spradlin?
Yes, that's one thing. Yeah, like people during One World were like, "Oh, he needs to take out Sabrina because she's a big threat." It's like nobody's a threat to her, nobody at all. So I think the threat to her is the person that might try to get rid of her, and Jason is top of that list. Obviously, like a Sydney or even maybe a Ty could get there when it's really close. And like, oh, I'd rather win than lose to Aubrey. But as you said, Sydney could very easily not even think that Aubrey's going to beat her.
Right.
And Ty might just not have that in him anymore. Or he might not be able to execute that move with somebody else. Like if Joe's still around, that's going to be pretty tough to do. She needs to get rid of Jason because the longer Jason's in there, the greater the temptation is to keep him in there instead of her. So she already has her goat. She doesn't need another one. So get rid of that goat as soon as possible.
I'm on board. All right, so let's talk about my dream scenario. Sydney.
So she needs to remove Aubrey or Ty. And it could be a final 3 or a final 2. But probably getting rid of Ty next week is more important than not. Because then she won't have many opportunities to. Like, I don't know if she can get rid of Aubrey instead in the next 2 weeks. Without then her becoming the next target, right? If she were to, just immediately like, that's it, I'm taking over and get rid of Aubrey and Ty, or actually Ty, Aubrey in that path, because the other one wouldn't be open. If they don't get rid of Ty this week, and he hasn't played his idol, they can't do it next week. Suddenly she's on the chopping block and would have to get past Joe, Michelle, Jason. So she needs to get rid of them, but not too quickly. And in that scenario, that's again where a Joe medevac would help her significantly.
Right. That's the ideal. So if a Joe medevac happens this coming week, and then expecting that Ty is going to play the idol at Final 5, you flip on Aubrey, coast to the $1 million.
Well, here's the thing that would help her. I think she actually is in much better shape if it's a Final 3 than it is if it's a Final 2. Because if it's a Final 3, or if it's a Final 2, she needs to win that Final 3 immunity.
Yeah, she's got to win her way in there. If it's Final 3, she can,
use Ty as a shield, Aubrey as a shield. Yeah, and then it's her, Michelle, Jason, and write the check.
Right. And speaking of Jason.
Yes, this is the interesting one that I think a lot of people would be like, 0%. I don't have him at 0%. I have him at maybe 5%. Because, as we've suggested, he's gotten narratives. He's gotten some character development. Here's the funny thing. And I think it's a low odds, but what he should be trying to do to win this game is the exact same path as Michelle. He should be trying to get in a Final 2 with Michelle.
He really should. The problem I have with Jason is it's hard to get him above 3 votes.
Oh no, that's where it gets to edit. But if he's trying to find a way to win and what he should be doing exactly what I said Michelle should be doing. And Morin, he should be the one doing it, right? Michelle could just let it happen, right?
Yeah.
He needs to be the one doing that. And that could help him in the sense that, he could take credit for these things. He could maybe eventually get that underdog shine. Here's one thing to remember. And again, I'm not crazy, and maybe this is just such a mental contrarian exercise that I'm suggesting that he could beat Michelle in a Final 2. Jason has not betrayed a single member of that jury, and I don't think he'll even have the opportunity to.
Yeah, I mean, if anything, he's just going to be part of voting blocks that take some people out along the way. If that, he hasn't even been voting on the right side.
Right, and if he votes to take somebody out, he hasn't betrayed them. That he wasn't on their side, right?
Right.
So they can't feel betrayed by anything he did. He did not betray Neil. He never really had a relationship with him, and he was medevac. Nick, he didn't vote for Nick. Debbie, he didn't vote for Debbie. Scott, Julia, he hasn't betrayed anybody, and from here on out, he's just trying to survive and advance. So he could become Chris Doherty. Only, maybe he actually did stuff to earn it this time. That was a cheap shot. I'm probably exaggerating how little Chris did, in response to how much people like to exaggerate how much he did. But, that's something. So what he needs to do is get to the Final 2 against the person whose story is so different from his. And that would be Michelle. I did stuff, she did nothing, and then you just kind of hope that the jury values doing stuff over liking the person they're voting for.
Right. Michelle is the goat's goat.
Yeah. Now, I kind of still think that the jury would vote for her, which
Probably.
is why, I think it's her path to victory. But he should be trying for the same thing, which sadly could help Michelle win the season.
Right. I mean, at the very least, it's his best chance. I do think, though, that it probably leads to Michelle winning.
Yeah. Now, I mean, he could beat Joe, I think, but I don't think he can get to the final two with Joe. If it gets to a scenario, then he's going to lose, unless he just starts winning crazy immunities and never votes out Joe.
I don't even know that he could necessarily beat Joe. I think it's still a toss-up at that point.
That's actually true. I think actually he might have a better chance against Michelle than Joe, just for this is how different I am than her. Like, I don't think anybody bears Joe any ill will. Maybe Michelle might get a little ill will from people that she had to betray.
Right.
Again, if you had to ask me final two, who's going to win, Michelle, Jason, I'd say Michelle. I'm not going crazy, but I think that's his best chance, as small a chance it is.
Right.
All right. So for the final person in the game, we should discuss Mark. What's Mark do?
Mark's doomed. That chicken is going to be dinner very, very, very soon.
I don't think so. His fate is tied to Ty, obviously. So Mark really has to align with Ty and maybe help him, sniff out, potential betrayals, which, I think the edit really pointed to this week.
I loved the pecking, the chicken alerting Ty, like, hey, just so you know, they're scheming against you, buddy.
Watch out. So there's obviously been a lot of Mark talk of late on the internet. I will give a hat tip to Rob for coming up with the best joke. And it's one of those that made me angry that I didn't think of it first, because that's what kind of an awful person I am, that I can't just, laugh at people's jokes. I have to, that could have been mine for my minuscule audience compared to his. But, then there's, obviously, because it's the internet, there's, a backlash to that. And where do you stand on the Mark the Chicken? Is this good fun, or is it, enough people?
You didn't even say what Rob's joke is for the people that haven't heard it.
Are there people that haven't heard it? He suggested that because they are still there, that Mark survives, and then is just put back as the next chicken reward in Cambodia. And Stephen Fishback may have eaten Mark the Chicken. But are you pro Mark the Chicken or anti-Mark?
Yeah, I don't really care that much about Mark.
Well, my point is, come on, it's just a fun little thing, people. Come on, you guys will complain about anything. We're just having some fun here. It's just jokes.
Yeah, I'm saying, I'm not emotionally attached to Mark. I'm also not, anti, how dare you guys embrace this ridiculous little thing. No, it's fine either way. I don't care.
But I actually kind of do think he's become a bit of a pet in the way that you're not supposed to, name your food because then you won't kill it. So He might make it even without Ty. Here's his other path to victory, and victory being not in the contestants' bellies, is if Joe and Jason precede Ty out the door, if they go before him, can those other three people kill and eat him? So if, the three guys go first, can Aubrey, Michelle, or Sydney, kill and prepare a chicken?
Absolutely. Remember when Chelsea did it because she's
Chelsea's
Southern?
A farm girl!
They assumed because Chelsea's Southern, she must know how to kill and eat a chicken.
And she did! She was she caught those chickens. She was just outside of our top 10 chicken moments.
All it takes is being born south of the Mason-Dixon line, and you will know how to kill and defeather a chicken.
Makes sense to me. That's what TV has told me.
Somehow I have that skill within me. I don't know it, but if I'm on Survivor someday, apparently it's just something I naturally know how to do.
Look, if the Purple Rock staff make the final 5 of Survivor, A, they've canceled Survivor. It's the worst season ever.
Yes. Oh my God.
B, it's up to you and Mark. That's just no bones about it. All right. So those are the players that matter. We might as well move on to predictions. What do we think is going to happen?
All right. I'm going to do fingers crossing moment here. It worked last week. I'm going to say Jason goes home this week. And not even because I necessarily want Jason to go home. It's really all about the scenario I laid out earlier on. If Jason goes home, Michelle is doomed.
Do you think it's a straight vote for Jason, or do you think they were targeting Ty and he plays his idol?
Sure, let's go vote split.
All right. I think, the signs point to Ty. I think Sydney might push for it, as we saw in the preview, that, could just be that Ty gets those big first britches and she doesn't like that. You don't get to call the shots around here. I do, boo. That was a much worse Sydney impression. I wasn't trying to do an impression.
Stick to Rupert.
And I could see Aubrey relenting, as she kind of did a lot. earlier in the season, where her primary target was not the target of her allies, and she let it happen. But I don't want it to happen, so that's what I'm going to predict. So I can see it happening. It's what I'm worried about happening. But you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and predict that Joe finally gets medevac.
Okay. And to be clear, if there is a medevac, I'm also predicting that it'll be Joe, just because that man has almost as little story as Michelle does.
Yeah, and like, he seems spent, right? And frankly, I get it, man. This is a hard season. He's 73 years old. That man has earned a break. I ain't doing none of that stuff, and I am half-ish his age.
Yeah, and your tell would be that in this week's episode, we actually saw him tapping out during the challenge, and they made a point of putting that moment on air.
Yeah, like, he didn't need to be there. He could have just been standing there.
Right.
And like, and not only did they have Probst say, Joe, are you giving up? Before that, as he was coming back and going over the obstacle course, Jeff kind of gave him a bit of a big up. Like, it's tough for anybody, especially a 73-year-old man. I kind of feel like that's not what Jeff was saying in the moment. He was clearly saying you got to dig deep. So that might have been a dub.
Yeah, exactly. Got to give the man some respect. He's not just anybody giving up on a challenge.
Yeah, so when he just kind of passes out next week, which could be hella terrifying because he's an old guy. Oh my god, I would not want to be there for that. Hopefully it's just kind of like an Eric thing where he's, woozy but never fully loses conscious. And, we know he doesn't die because he's a delightful person on social media. Yes, that's what I'm predicting. I'm predicting that it happens next week as opposed to the week after that because I'm invested in Ty not going home.
Okay.
Alright, so where can they find us?
PurpleRockPodcast.com is our site. We do a live blog of the show every week. And then immediately after that, you can come in and join our comment section, which is, frankly, far larger than I think we ever imagined it would be. We usually get around 500 comments for each episode, which is awesome because we have really, really interesting commenters. And they're pretty funny, too. Occasionally, I'll steal their material and give them credit.
And occasionally we forget to give y'all credit. Sorry about that.
Occasionally I'll just blindly steal their stuff. And we also just finished the best tribal council ever bracket. Your winner, spoiler alert, is Parvati's double idol play in Heroes vs. Villains.
We have a fantasy game, which you cannot join now, but it apparently is fun. You should join it in the future. I'm retired from it because, you can only win so often. For me, that's once.
Your jersey's up in the rafters.
Hey, I still think I have the highest winning percentage of all time. We're not going to do the math on that, but just
just
I
trust
think it's
you.
True. I think it's especially true since our friend Purple Rock Emma totally bit it this season. So I think that pushed her winning percentage down, and mine should be right up there.
Yeah. You can also find us on Twitter. The show is at Purple Rock Pod. Andy is at Purple Rock Andy. And I am at Purple Rock John.
Subscribe to us on your favorite podcatcher, be it iTunes, Stitcher, or Google Play. And email us if you'd like to at purplerockpodcast@gmail.com. Why don't we hit the theme music?
That's what it's like when a woman wants a baby.